The deadly office shooting in Midtown, we're learning more about the alleged shooter's background on how he was able to purchase multiple guns.
The incident has reignited the national debate over gun control in the U.S., with lawmakers split on how to respond. And joining us now is Heiny, the Chief Programs and Policy Officer at Brady, a gun violence prevention organization. And New York has some of the toughest gun laws in the country, but Governor Hochul says they're only as effective as the laws in surrounding states. Can you explain how federal standards can be at conflict with state laws?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I think it's exactly the kind of thing that we are constantly working on here at Brady. We know that we can only do so much with state laws, because at the end of the day, if we don't raise that federal minimum standard, we're always going to be fighting with the lowest common denominator. And so New York is a perfect example of that, right? New York, you are far less likely to be shot than the national average. In fact, 2/3 lower percentage than the national average when it comes to the lowest gun death rates. And this is something that we see across the board. States that have strong gun laws tend to have the lowest gun death rates, and states with the weakest gun laws tend to have the highest gun death rates. So we really need to work at the federal level to address the epidemic that we have here if we want to create the meaningful change that's going to prevent shootings like this one from happening.
Now, the shooter reportedly had a documented history of mental health issues. Critics of gun reform often point to mental illness as the issue instead of access to guns. What's your response to them?
Look, I don't want to overplay the fact. I mean, to be honest, we have a real issue in this country where we perpetuate stigmas and tend to sort of misalign the true problem. The U.S. doesn't experience mental health rates any different than the rest of the free world. But the bottom line is that the U.S. fundamentally has a gun violence problem that no other industrialized country in the industrialized world has, and that's because of our access to weapons. We listen to the same amount of violent music, we have the same mental health rates, we have the same problems with anger issues. The difference is that we really make it unbelievably easy for people to access weapons, and that is why we experience gun violence the way that we do in this country. There are tools that I think prevent people in crisis from accessing firearms temporarily, tools like extreme risk laws, sometimes known as red flag laws, that really are moving the ball forward for people who are at a higher risk, maybe because they also are living with a mental illness. But we don't want to overplay the role of mental illness itself as a factor in causing gun violence.
And you mentioned the red flag laws. Can you talk briefly about this law and how it makes a difference?
Yeah, I mean, these laws are rooted in evidence, right? At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we know that oftentimes people closest to individuals in crisis are the ones that see the warning signs. And we want to give them the tools to temporarily remove a firearm so that we can prevent tragedies from occurring. Some of that, is self-harm and suicide. 3 out of 5 gun deaths in this country are firearm suicide. But a lot of these mass shootings are also scenarios where those closest with them see the warning signs firsthand. So these extreme risk laws work with the courts, they utilize due process, and it's just about temporarily removing firearms from these situations so that people can get the help they otherwise don't get. And they're proven to be unbelievably effective at preventing tragedies before they occur rather than after.
And I wanted to ask you, what do you feel is the most effective legislative step that can be taken to make a difference in the fight against gun violence?
Yeah, look, I think that there are the example of New York having a gun death rate that's nearly 2/3 lower than the national average. That's not because of any one policy. It's because of all of the work that they've done, the comprehensive approach that states like New York, California, and other states that are really far lower than the national average, because it takes a comprehensive approach. Gun violence looks so different in so many different forms, from firearm suicide to domestic violence to the very unique nature of mass casualty shootings like the one that New York is experiencing today. So it takes a comprehensive approach. Universal background checks, assault weapons bans, and funding things like community violence intervention practices. That's going to be the magic way in which we're able to really tackle something that has become the leading death of children in this country.
Heine from Brady, thanks so much for joining us. And stay with CBS News New York for the very latest on the deadly Midtown office shooting. Look for live updates today on air and streaming on CBS News New York.